Hello and welcome everyone to the January Hangout. Happy New Year. Seems strange saying Happy New Year at the end of January, but there we go. Today we are going to cover smart processes. We'll get into exactly what we mean by smart processes in a second. I'm pleased to say I'm ably joined by Mr. Mark Stania again today, for those that have been on previous Hangouts. He's in the room with me in sunny Chalfont St. Peter in the UK today. And we have joining us remotely Laurie Sinnott. For those of you
Good afternoon, morning, hi.
Able to attend our last session, you'll have met Laurie before. So between the three of us today, over the next hour or so, we're going to cover everything to do with smart processes. In particular, and where we'll kind of start with this is Bizagi, how to build highly personalized processes. So in a second, as you know, if you've attended one of these before, most of the content is demo content, so we'll show you how to physically build these things, and Laurie will drive us through the demo that he has prepared in a second. And we'll look at personalized processes. We'll also look at how personalized processes drive engagement, customer engagement or employee engagement, and of course, in all of this, ensure that they're optimized always. But first things first, if you've not joined a Hangout before, and this is your first time, the whole point of a Hangout, they're fairly informal. We show you some content, but mainly you ask questions. So feel free at any time, at any point through the Hangout session today, ask us some questions, and we'll get through as many of those as we can in the time that we've got provided. Won't always be able to answer all your questions, but we'll try our best.
And of course, if we don't answer any of those questions, we'll endeavour to reach out to all of you after the event to follow up on those.
Absolutely. So first things first, before I hand over to Laurie, what do we mean by context? Context is an interesting one. Really, if you think about it today in kind of very consumer-driven world, there is, or has been for a few years, this kind of focus on a high degree of personalization of a service. People want to feel like they're getting a personalized service, and that's fine. That's kind of consumerism, if you like, at its kind of nth degree. You know, people want to feel like they're the only person with a certain preference or a set of needs, and they're getting served by any brand, say. And that's fairly standard. So kind of from a brand perspective, kind of marketing to an audience of one. But really, with technology, it's kind of going beyond that with things like AI, machine learning. We're seeing already the need to kind of enhance that customer experience with technology so that it's going to more of a kind of contextualized experience. And what we mean by that is it shouldn't be impossible in the future to look at the demographics of a person, the location of a person, and the time space of that person, that individual. You know, it could be a life event, or it could be where they physically are in that moment. But certain products and services get offered to them at that time. Good example I'll give you, if you think about an obvious one around insurance. So you go skiing for an afternoon, instead of having to pay, you know, for an expensive insurance premium for, you know, a set period of time, maybe a week or a month or a year. Wouldn't it be good if you could be offered a tailored insurance service that covered you for the duration of the time that you were actually skiing in that location, and based on the risk assessment of skiing in that location, so the premium was altered accordingly. So you knew you were getting absolutely a valued service, a valued product that was tailored to your need at that time. That's what we mean by contextualized. Now, for most of us today, that service isn't a reality. We don't experience that today, but I think we'll start to see over the next few years with, as I said, AI technology, machine learning capability, and ever more intelligent devices, the ability to be able to offer those kinds of highly contextualized services. So really today, the context of, you know, what's Bizagi got to do with this, we're going to show you our take on contextualization with the demo we're about to show you. So our vision is to get to what I've just described, that very personalized service. And as the technology matures and embeds, we will see kind of moves in that direction. We can actually do a lot of it already today, and hopefully at the end of this session, you'll see too that it's possible to do a very contextualized offering, be that to your staff, to employees, to make them more productive in how they serve their customers or work within the business, or ultimately to your end customers. So without further ado, I am going to hand over to Mr. Sinnott.
Thank you.
Whilst we do that, if you have any questions, please enter them into the question and answer panel as we go along, and we'll try and feed those into the presentation as we go.
Cool. I'll just slightly minimize the control panel there. So if there's an issue, don't hesitate to say. I've just got a couple of slides really, because it's interesting, I think, and certainly if people have got an input on this, and it's worthwhile asking about kind of contextualization. And we've done previous Hangouts, around kind of Internet of Things or artificial intelligence as well, which really start to show the variety of different flavors we can introduce, let's call it contextualization, into, I guess, the kind of applications, processes that we build, and making those easier and better for the people who use them to work with them. And so kind of the first bit I wanted to just maybe give you a flavor of was just maybe a few or a variety of perhaps different user experiences in a variety of different contexts, if you'll excuse the pun. Just to start from a kind of one end of the spectrum and maybe go up to the other, and then we'll kind of see how we can alter that, change that, build that, add some new context into that scenario to enrich that experience. So the kind of four scenarios we've got, not necessarily in order, so to speak. We've got a kind of financial services scenario where, what does that experience look like for our kind of loans advisor there? We've got a kind of, which anyone who's on the previous Hangout would have seen much more detail on, a kind of wind farm scenario where we're using Bizagi to manage and measure and operate a whole set of remote wind farms. What does that experience look like for someone in charge of those operations? A more traditional internal environmental provisioning workflow system, where what does that experience look like in terms of the more traditional workflow? And then at the far right, we've got a kind of what we call demand management scenario, where we're running Bizagi in our organization, and that's allowing all our employees to kind of add new ideas as to how we might improve. There might be product ideas, there might be organizational ideas, and they're going to go through a process where we get reviewed, and they might get put into the product, they might get implemented in terms of processes that we see internally in the company. Maybe we'll start off, and again, I don't see the control panel here, guys, so if there was an issue with the screen or the voice, just shout out. Maybe we'll start off real quick, excuse me, with the provisioning one. As I'm an IT administrator. Our organization allows folks to request and provision new environments where we might do development, where we might do test, where we might get new production environments. And, there's a nice kind of process we built on Bizagi to allow us to initiate that and manage that through all of its various stages. Let's just flip over to our web browser here. And one of those stages later on down the line is where we come in and we've got to have our case. It's going to be routed to the folks who look after the operating systems, because we've got folks looking after databases, folks looking after the virtual environments, folks looking after the operating systems. And one of our folks in the operating systems team's got this new case, and it's already been through a variety of different stages up to this point. And within Bizagi, we can see those different stages that it's been through, where someone's made the request, someone in the architecture teams planned out the thing, someone in the capacity teams planned out the thing, and it's come to us in the infrastructure team. So the smallest element of context that we can imagine there already is that there's a certain set of information about this case in terms of the solution I need, the environment I need it deployed on, what it is, how it's been provisioned up to this point on the virtual machines. And the context is that the platform's going to understand that if it's, for example, a Windows system that I want provisioning, even though there's maybe 10, 20, 30 people in the operating systems team, only certain of those people have certain skills in Windows. Other people have got skills in Unix. Other people have got skills in maybe some other Java operating systems as well. So if you will, the smallest, almost imperceptible level of context we can imagine is that within our processes, we can design in those kind of contextual rules where the platform can be intelligent about how it routes work to the right people in the right team, and knowing about them, the right skills, and even sometimes the right location that they're in. We might have a global process where certain work needs to get routed to certain people in certain offices in certain countries, depending on that particular work. So to me, this is kind of, if you will, we almost take this as a given sometimes, but having the ability within the platform to be able to route that work intelligently and to be able to make sure that the right people get the work at the right time, regardless to a degree, you know, and it be able to understand where they are, and to a degree, if they're in the office, out of the office, and the skills that they've got. So our chap here, Oscar, he's got Windows skills, so he's going to see and he's going to be working on these provisioning cases that require Windows skills. He's not going to see some of those ones that require Unix skills or Java skills. So that's the kind of,
presumably, Laurie, that could be routed to a team as well as an individual.
Yes, like I say, within Bizagi, the great thing about the platform, and again, understanding the context, is that not only can we take account of things like skills, things like location, but we can say, well, okay, yeah, there's 20 people in that operating systems team, and they've perhaps 10 of them have got Windows skills. Okay, now what do we want? Well, actually, we want to load balance the work. We don't want to just give it to the same person every time. We want to have the platform understand how much work each of them have got at the moment and give it to the person, for example, with the least amount of work. That could be a choice. It could be that in that choice we say, yeah, the person with the least amount of work, but this case, well, I mean, what are we now? We're in the UK at least, 20 to 4 in the afternoon in a kind of Greenwich mean time zone. Let's put some time zone stuff in that intelligence as well. So we're only going to give it to the people who are actually up and awake right now. Maybe the people on the other side of the world who also have Windows skills, because it's a global operation, you know, they're not up yet. Or indeed, you know, they might not be in the office yet. So it's that kind of stuff, yeah. And as I said, sometimes that's taken as a given, but I think that's really important in rather than just being pretty dumb about and relying upon us allocating that work manually, or having someone who runs that team take each of these cases and go, okay, Oscar, you have this one, and Bob, you have that one, and Dawn, you have that one over there. And they spend sometimes, you know, what we see when we work with a lot of customers is still a lot of effort in these organizations about routing work intelligently. And a lot of it's done manually, and you know, that's quite costly and it takes a lot of time. So that's our kind of first example. It's certainly in this demo, you know, we're not going into a huge amount of depth. We're not going to be running kind of any of these processes. And so, you know, Oscar here, simply, yeah, I've got a view of my own inbox, my own task list, if you will, and that's showing me the work that's come in. If we go one step further than that, and we take a look at our kind of demand management system. In this scenario, any employee in our company can use the Bizagi platform, and we can request new ideas, new changes, you know, either to the product, either to our own internal way of working. Actually, yeah, we need a new expenses process or whatever. So the platform's going to allow us to come in as an employee, for example, and log a new idea into the system. We can go ahead and we can, you know, populate this with whatever. What's the idea about? Well, it's a company idea. It's about HR, and I'd like, you know, reviews to happen once every 12 months, whatever the idea might be. That's not actually the most important thing. What we're seeing when we log in here is the kind of next level, I would say, of context, which is the understanding of already what position or what role I occupy within the company. And as an employee, the context of being an employee is that what I need to see, the things that I do, should be kind of immediately apparent to me when I come into the system. So yes, I log a new idea, but also I get different views and different views of the information that's mine, that I own, that's relevant to me. So I already might have logged some other ideas that have moved on and are under review in whatever kind of the demand management process is. So I can access those records, those ideas, those pieces of information, and still get the context of being able to get an overview of those pieces of information, have a look at the history currently behind what's happening with my idea, and in addition, any kind of feedback that's maybe been gathered about that idea. Because, you know, when I log an idea, it's going to get reviewed, people are going to look at it. If it's a product idea, it might actually make it through, you know, into the product. So the idea of context now is to be able to give me these very personalized views. I had some previous ideas. Oh, actually, I can see this one has made it through, and it's planned. We're going to, you know, plan that idea, and it's going to make it through into the product. So the things that are under review, my previous ideas being planned, when I log in as an employee, you know, that might be the contextual view of what my world is. Now, later on in this process, I might be that first line of review. I might be one of those reviewers. So when I log into the system, you know, my world is different. It potentially is that I don't get to log ideas in a sense, because most of my world's about ideas are always coming in from different employees, and I now want to browse through those ideas and interact with them. Interact in the way of setting different statuses on those ideas. Maybe the idea is we're going to revisit that idea later. I've discussed it with some colleagues. We're going to mark it up as accepted. I can get an overview of the idea. Like I say, we can initiate other workflows and processes off this idea, because maybe I've got to go and gather some feedback from a couple of my colleagues. So maybe I've got someone who works actually on the product team, and I'm going to need some feedback from him or her, and I can go and create that feedback. But it could be I need also to see who it is that I've currently got outstanding feedback that I'm waiting upon. So as you know, this, what I do, how I do it, the way that I do it is very different to that context of being an employee. The context of being a reviewer here is a very different thing in terms of what I see and what I can do. So we started at a kind of traditional world, almost traditional workflow world, and so what's context there? We moved a little now into this kind of, when I actually come into the system, yeah, not only can I see that kind of inbox, but now I've got this thing that's me, this screen called me, which already is giving us a sense that it's more personalized to who I am, what I do, and also the information that I need to see. Now, let's take that one step further. In our, and again, for those who are on the last Hangout, you'll have seen this in much more detail, our wind farms demonstration. And the scenario here is that, you know, as an organization, we're using the Bizagi platform to manage and monitor and respond to a whole variety, hundreds of wind farms, you know, that we got dotted around the country. And we need to be able to respond to and manage and measure the performance of those wind farms. And if anything's going wrong when we're picking up those measurements through the Internet of Things, we need to be able to automatically have the platform trigger and respond, and we can get people out on site and fix it. Now, when I log in here, I'm what's called a kind of lead engineer. So I've got responsibility for a whole number of areas, or as we call it, regions, excuse me, within the country. In those regions, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 wind farms. Each of those wind farms has got turbines. So part of what I do in my role, and part of what I want the platform to be able to give me and understand about me is, yes, I manage a whole number of regions. If someone else, another lead regional engineer, logs in, when they come here, they're going to see a set of different regions to those that I'm seeing, because it understands those regions that I manage. And I can get an overview of that particular region, and I can get some contextual information about the particular wind farms in that region and where they are, and when they came online and the number of turbines in them, and so on and so forth. And we can provide the contextual information visually of kind of literally where they are, for example, on the particular map. But then, yeah, there are wind farms in those regions, so I can drill down one step further into that set of wind farms, and I can get, for example, a right now real-time weather forecast of what's going on up there. Again, I can get an overview of the wind farms and some real-time measurements of a whole range of things, and weather readings and so on and so forth. That's all good. And even then I could go right down to the individual turbines in those farms and have a look at a whole set of more detailed readings and charts showing me what's going on there. I'm not running any workflows or whatever. The context is about understanding the information that I own, how that information relates to each other, and also providing me, and this is where it starts to get interesting, with based on the information that I'm looking at, what is it I can do with that information? So, you saw me get a weather forecast and overview. And it looks like here I've got some things about inspections and directions. But if I scroll down that list of wind farms, actually I don't get those options here. And what we're doing now, as I said, the next level of contextualization is the understanding of that information that we're looking at. And in this scenario, the business requirements and rules that say that these wind farms and the turbines in them need to be inspected once every year, never mind responding to any problems that we might have during the year. There's an annual inspection that needs to happen on each of these wind farms. And we can see the last date of that annual inspection as we browse through this information. And if I said that there's a certain threshold or window by which we need to get that inspection sorted out, and that was, let's say, 10 months, then that context is applied to the information that I'm looking at. So we can see the last inspection here was 2016. So understanding that context of 10 months, the platform's now offering me the ability to kick off a new annual inspection process on that wind farm, and also giving me something about getting directions, because I probably want to go up to that particular wind farm and drive up there. So it understands where I currently am in terms of driving and can give me kind of directions. There we go. From where I am right now, that's about 2 doors away, right up to that specific wind farm itself, because it understands where physically I am right now. Again, if I was on my tablet device and we were many, many miles away, it would understand that. So we've got context around our business scenario, and yeah, I can't do it on these two. There's no point making me do a search through all of these wind farms and then look at all of the dates and decide for myself whether they fall with or within those thresholds. Our platform should be able to understand those things and offer up to me the right things to do with the information that I'm looking at, and to understand where I am.
So you had a question come in, Laurie. It's quite an interesting one. It's what products do we need from Bizagi in order to be able to run this functionality? So is this only available in Bizagi Studio is a question, but I think it would be interesting just to point out what technology is required to get all of this functionality.
In essence, yes, it's Bizagi Studio or the Bizagi platform, which is only kind of 3 elements, and the runtime element, Bizagi Studio, where we're going to see in a minute, we build these things, and Bizagi Engine, which is what we're looking at now, really, which is where these things run. as an end user, what technology do I need? I just need a web browser. Or again, as we'll see in a minute, I just need a mobile device. That's the only technology I need, a web browser. If we want to design and build these applications, we just need something called Bizagi Studio, which is here. And we're going to use this a bit in a minute when we add some new context to one of our scenarios. Don't know if that answers the question.
Yeah, absolutely, yes. Thank you.
So we're now making a journey where now, if you will, it's getting a little bit more intelligent, and it understands the kind of things that we're looking at, and even in this example, understands actually where we are. So the final one, which was our kind of financial services scenario, again, when we come in, we're coming in as a kind of loans advisor. I work with customers. I take down these applications for property loans, for buying new properties from customers. And when I come into the system, what's my world about? Well, my world is about recording new applications from customers if they're on the phone, or if I'm in a branch, either I'm behind my desk in the branch, or I've got my iPad and I'm sat with the customer in another corner of the branch office. We're taking down these applications. And again, yeah, they move through a kind of quite sometimes ad hoc and case management style process to validate and do some artificial intelligence and fraud detection and risk assessment to give that customer the loan. And from a workflow point of view, they'll always start with me, but then move on through to underwriting teams and risk assessments and so on. But I always need to keep a track of those applications. So part of my contextual view of the world is to be able to still view the applications that are outstanding that I've taken down, because actually there's still some things I may need to do with those cases, even though they've moved on, if you will, in a traditional workflow sense there with the underwriting team or whatever, because the customer may ring up and have a query and I might need to email the customer. The customer might ring up and say, well, actually, we don't want this loan anymore. We want to cancel it, because I'm that point of contact with the customer. So, my world is about giving me access to that, but also, completely unrelated to that, I've got training courses that I attend and come up, and these are going to appear in my view, my portal, my stuff, because this is to do with me. So those are my training courses. These are my applications. Another loans advisor who's coming into the system will undoubtedly see a different set of applications and maybe even a different set of training courses. And so what we wanted to do here, in the previous example of those wind farms, what I'd shown you was kind of how that context will understand what we're looking at and give me some different options based on what I'm looking at and indeed who I am. And so we actually wanted to do, if we've got time, yeah, we've got time, a real small and quick example of how we can build this kind of contextual experience in the platform. And again, very small. And we did a previous Hangout, right, guys, about AI. And so it's really good. Go and have a look at that one. Because that really went into, for example, artificial intelligence. But in the time today, we just wanted to show how easy it is to kind of build some new context into an existing system that we've already got, like this financial services one. And so if I bring up one more slide and go to this one, what we wanted to show you was in this financial services example, what if, our new scenario was that, we're taking down these property loans, loan applications from customers, but, we're a financial services company and we offer much, much more than loans. Steve mentioned insurance earlier on. So what we'd really like to do to improve the way that we do things is get our loans advisors to be able to offer up or cross-sell some great new insurance deals that we've got to our customers who are purchasing properties. Now, actually, we want to try it out because it's a really good deal, and so we don't want to offer this to all of our customers. We only want to offer this to the customers who are currently maybe getting a loan or purchasing properties that, are quite high, because it's maybe an insurance deal that we just want to trial at the moment and see how it works with some of those high value properties. So that's the first kind of new business requirement that we want to put in there. And the second one is more of a legal one, which is kind of the case in every country really, which is, in the UK financial service, FCA regulations, or in the US, or there's a whole set of financial regulations, know your customer, treating customers fairly, data protection, all that, which kind of say, well, we can't just have any loans advisor talk to our customers about and sell to our customers property insurance. It's got to be loans advisors that have reached a certain level of training within the organization. So those, these are pretty simple, right? But those are the two kind of new requirements that we want. And again, we could just get our loans advisors to do a nice search and start manually trawling through all of these applications and have a look at the purchase prices and whatever. And how do we deal with another loan advisor who hasn't reached the right level of training? Well, we better tell them not to do that, or, so we could kind of rely on people not making mistakes, and we could rely on managing that stuff manually, but it'd be much, much better if we could use and build that kind of intelligence, contextual intelligence, into the platform. So this is where very quickly we're going to go behind the scenes and take a look at Bizagi Studio, where we build these kind of applications. And I'm sure, there'll be some people who maybe when we look at this go, oh, right, how do we build web services, and how do we do this, and how do we do that? And we've got some great kind of video resources on our website, and white papers, and even the complete product documentation. So today we don't really have time to delve into a whole range of kind of capability here. What we want to focus on is this bit here, which is we call the experience designer, because this is where we can start to design and build those contextual experiences, which in our financial services environment demo scenario at the moment, we've got our loans advisor, and our loans advisor has access to information that they own, always should have access to certain kinds of searches, has certain things or processes or workflows that are relevant to them that they launch quite often, and has actions that should appear in the right context of who they are and the information that they're looking at. It should be a bit easier when we kind of bring this to life, if you remember that scenario. So we want initially a kind of new context which only applies to our kind of loans advisors, because this is who they are. This is just for them. It's not going to apply to our underwriters because they've got a very different context and they do different things. It's just going to apply to our loans advisors. And remember, we talked about training levels, and it's only going to apply to our loans advisors who've reached a certain training level. So we can go and create a brand new context. These kind of things are always available, but what we mean by context is actually we're going to name this context insurance because it applies to our insurance scenario. And we can now design some rules into this context. And our rule is going to take some of the information we understand about our loans advisor, in this case, our training level. And it's this third level. Only those loans advisors who've internally been trained up to that sales level are going to be able to offer these great property insurance deals to our customers. So that's the context at the first level of what we want to call insurance.
Just a quick question there. So those tables that you were just looking at, obviously they were predefined. So is it a question of there's kind of a data set sitting behind this that someone has created that you're kind of then pulling into the context rule here? How does that work?
Yeah, I mean, so what we were pulling in was just a whole set of information that we already understand about people by the sheer dint, if you will, of them logging in. it's possible for us to pull in other information. And yes, you're right, when we come into Bizagi and we design applications, part of what we're doing there is, yes, designing information about what is a loan application, right? Customer, loan amount, that kind of stuff. But the people and the skills that they have and the roles that they're in and the organization is stuff that's almost part of the system information in Bizagi, because by dint of you logging in, we already know a great deal about you. So that's the information we're pulling in there, because you've got a set of training courses that have been stored against your personal information, and so we're simply accessing that.
Okay.
If that makes sense.
Yep.
But yes, I mean, you can build contexts, not just around that, but again, very detailed contexts that understand more about the kind of information you're looking at. And that's actually what we're going to do now. Because so far, we've got that, but that's not going to offer us up as an end user anything, because we haven't put anything in there. So what we want to put in is what we call one of these actions that is going to give us the option when we're browsing through those customer loans to be able to click on this button, if you will, and that's going to launch an existing process we've already got, which is our kind of insurance, selling insurance, cross-selling insurance process, because we already do that, but we want to bring that now into the kind of loan advisor experience. So we can give this action a name, even if I could spell it, be really good, called selling insurance. And that's just a name, you know, just something that has a meaning for us here in the design environment. Okay, so we need to configure that. So we do a little bit that says, okay, what kind of information does this action make sense in? What's the context of this action? Well, it's our loan application. Okay, as it's going to appear as a button, what do we want that button to say? So let's say we want it to say offer insurance, which is good. Now, when we click that button, what do we want that thing to do? And this is awesome and cool, because we can have that go and start an existing process that we've already got, which we have in this case. We could just have it in, and you saw that in some of the earlier examples, open up a kind of information window that we could interact with. We might just want to execute a business rule. And the scenario there might be we want to run, let's say, I don't know, a credit check, or go and call our artificial intelligence and get a kind of fraud prediction, or a whole variety of scenarios like that. We don't just have to start new workflows or processes. In this simple example, though, you know, there is a bit of kind of governance around what we call an insurance review. So when we click that, we're going to start one of those, and that's great. But if you remember, I said that the other bit of context was we were only going to trial this out with loans, customer loans where the property's above a certain value, just to see how it works. Because again, this is all about trying things out quickly, seeing whether they work. If they don't work, well, maybe we can make some changes. We don't want to spend a huge, you know, amount of development time doing this, months and months and months. We want to make these changes quickly. So we can come into some of the advanced options here. We won't go into all of the kind of information and steps, you know, and we can still limit, as you can already see, we're limiting this currently to loans advisors, and we can kind of decide where we want to make it visible. But when should that button appear? And this is the next element of context, because we want to understand some information about what it is that we're looking at. And so we can bring up this kind of rule that we've got, which is purchase price, because now this is giving us access to all of the information. Now, obviously, we're at design time here, but at runtime, this gives us access to all of the information in our loan, including the purchase price of the property. And so we can say that it should only appear when the purchase price is greater than or equal to something we've got called cross-sell property price. And I'll come back to that, because that is a number, yes, but we don't want to put the number directly in here in the sense of, because that might change. We might want to change that. So if we express that as kind of what we call a vocabulary item, we can make changes regularly to that number without ever coming back here and changing the rule. So we make that change, sell insurance. Let's just run that real quick again. Same loans advisor, the same experience when I log in. And again, the same, these are the applications that I've been dealing with around offering insurance. So the first two we've now got, and I'm not going to click it. We're not going to run through a kind of cross-sell process. We're only interested in what it is to get the context of this action, this button to appear, offer insurance. The first two and the second two don't. Now, if we look at the purchase price, 275, 350, 500, 550. So we're getting the platform understanding the context of who I am. I'm a loans advisor. The price of the properties. So if I came up here and also said, because remember in that little rule we had cross-sell property price, which we've expressed as a kind of variable, a vocabulary item, and we've currently got that defined to 450,000, almost 500,000. But we might want to change that because, maybe that's not giving us enough of a representative trial. So we can come down and change that, 300,000, let's say, and we can update that value directly here. Obviously, if we're if we're logged in, we've got the suitable permissions or whatever, we don't want to make this kind of capability available to everyone. So we can close that. And in theory, don't know, I might have to come back to the browser. Yep, you can see now I've got that option down there at the bottom because this property price squeaks in, which is kind of nice. So
everything you've shown there, Laurie, I mean, there's no coding there. That's just kind of wizard driven. So a business analyst with guardrails set, a business analyst could map conditions and set rules for.
And that's the idea. I mean, of course, we can do real complex rules that require coding and so on. But if we set it up, those things like cross-sell property price, rather than put numbers in, if we do it in such a way that we can express it as a name, like we did in our rule. Let's go right to our rule here and express it as a name. Now I can read that, right? It's greater than or equal to cross-sell property price. I don't need to understand XML or anything like that to be able to design that kind of rule or read that rule or even understand what that rule is. And so, literally all you saw me do there is all I need to be able to kind of build that in. And if I come up here and we do a quick bit of user management, because remember the other thing was it needs to know, and in theory we did it in such a way that it should know what level of training I've got. So if I search in our kind of user management, excuse me, if I search for this guy, there he is, Ross Lawrence. I search for him. Whoops, I'm on the wrong dialogue altogether, so I need to go to this one. And we go to loans advisors, and I got one loans advisor there, Ross. He's the one who's currently logged in. Now remember, he's already got that right level of training because we got that context built in. Let's take him sorry, Ross, we're going to take you down a level just for the purposes of this demo. We're demoted, you've lost that training, and let's just log in again real quick as Ross Lawrence, and we'll come back. Now, even though we've got the right property price there and we've got the right property price there and the one at the bottom because we made that change, we don't see that option at all because we're not in this scenario, in this business scenario, allowed to do that because this woman is not trained to the sufficient level. So it understands, I mean, two very simple in one sense, but really interesting piece of context, who I am and what I am, but also when I'm looking at the information, the kind of information I'm looking at to be able to offer me up those scenarios. So, we can go and put him back because he'll obviously get a bit annoyed with us if we don't put him back, and change him up again to sales. So whenever his or her situation changes and the information about them changes, the platform's automatically going to respond albeit in a very simple way that we've built in here to offer them up what they want. And just to show you.
So for this simple example, what we're really showing is that as the company has a specific target for selling insurance, it can vary the offer level at which that insurance offer is set at based upon how well the offer is going. So, you know, you can be flexible in how you meet your target. But also you could imagine in the same scenario that if the FCA regulations are changing, which they do in a very fluid manner, you can make your process adapt and change in relation to how the regulations are changing. And that's something that's really difficult to achieve. Many companies have trouble with achieving the FCA regulations because they do change quite rapidly. And so, you know, you know, we've got a system here that helps you achieve that.
What's really cool. Oh, sorry, go on.
Sorry, Laurie. Well, we do have a question that's come in that we might want to touch on later, but it's about dashboards. So, you know, when we've achieved all of these things and we're working through these processes, how do we show the users an appropriate dashboard of what's happening?
Yeah, I mean, again, there's some great or more in-depth videos about this, but there's a whole range of kind of dashboards that we have in the platform that allow us to understand kind of what's going on right now. What cases have we got in the system right now? Are they on time? Are they at risk? Are they overdue? What work have we got that's currently in progress right now? When's that going overdue? Or maybe I'm responsible for managing a particular process, and within that process, you know, there are activities, and those activities themselves have SLAs. And so I need to see what's going on within this process right now in the system. And again, is it things on time? Are they at risk? Are they overdue? Or even go back and just take a look at this process map itself, you know, the one that we started life with and we designed, and understand at various stages in this map, what stuff is there? Is it on time? Is it overdue? And historically as well, it's really important to be able to kind of look back over any period of time to go, how are we doing? Are things on time? Maybe we've still got to go back and slightly tweak the way we're doing things, because I don't know, the past 5 days, you know, we're meant to be doing things in 5 days, and that's good. We're doing them in just over 3. But if we look at our year, that's an increase. It's taking us longer in the past week, past month to do things than it has been over the past year. And so we might want to then come in and say, well, okay, what were the most frequent ways in which these cases were being closed? 31% went a certain route, I don't know, 10% went another route, and so on. So there's a wealth of kind of analytics, there's a wealth of kind of reporting that we can draw upon, and we can actually put in the hands of our end users. We don't build this stuff. We don't design SQL queries for this stuff. This is all things that, you know, whether you're a kind of manager or executive or whatever, you can build your own reports and charts and stuff like that.
Cool, thank you.
No worries.
Sorry to interrupt you.
No. What was interesting, I briefly flashed up on the screen and gave you no context about it whatsoever. But all of what we've seen and all of what we've talked about, I'm just showing you now Bizagi running on our Bizagi mobile app for that same loans advisor, because everything we do is automatically mobile enabled. So when we design these applications and these screens, we don't have to go away and redesign and rebuild just because we want this thing running on our mobile device. It's automatically there, including all of that contextual stuff. See, we've got male applicant and offer insurance there as we browse through the list of our loan applications. And from a reporting point of view, all of those reports you just saw as well are available to us on our mobile device. So just to give you.
And one of the other interesting points about our mobile capability is that when you develop things to be mobile, you're also able to use the functionality of the device as well, aren't you? So the camera and the geolocation and things like that.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, you know, a typical scenario might be actually later on, about halfway through this actual financial services process, As a customer, sometimes you might need to provide some more documentation back to support your loan. It might be, I don't know, a copy of your birth certificate or passport photo, whatever. And later on in this demo, yeah, you can, if you've got your phone at home, you can load that up, take pictures of those, send those directly in. Or if you're out in the field, for example, in that wind farms thing, you're on site, you've got a broken turbine, you can interact with your case through the mobile device. And if you're taking a picture, or sorry, if you need to provide pictorial evidence of where the wind farm's turbine's broken, you know, on the desktop, you'd be uploading a file, but on your mobile device, the application would understand and would give you the option of using the camera to take that picture.
Very contextual.
Indeed, yes, that's the word of the day. So yeah, very contextual. I mean, I think there's some real power here. So, and in a sense, in the time that we've got in our thing today, we're really just kind of skimming the surface. And when you think, like Steve said, about artificial intelligence and being able to use artificial intelligence and big data to be able to do a lot of that kind of analysis of information to provide the right kinds of actions or contextual things or options for me as an employee, or me dealing with a customer or a partner or a supplier, in terms of the kinds of things that we can do. It just makes the experience here as an end user, employee, partner, supplier, customer a lot richer and a lot more, I hate to use the word personalized sometimes, but it knows about me. It knows where I am, what I'm looking at, who, you know, what I do, my skills, and it makes what I do quicker and easier. I said, because the things that we've done, in a sense, I said we could have had people do them manually. We could have done searches. We could have, you know, compiled lists. We could have manually kind of filtered through those things. And okay, we've got 5 customers now on this list. Right, let's ring them up one by one, or one by one we come into the system and we start a new kind of insurance case one by one. But it's a lot easier and a lot more powerful when we can do it this way. Let me bring back up the control panel as well so I can see if there are any questions. So I'm just going to flip back the screen unless there's anything that anyone wants to see further on the screen.
Yeah, so if you do have any questions, please feel free to post them now. But at the moment, we don't have any more right now, Laurie. So we'll just wait and see if post something.
Perfect. Okay. Do you want to flip back to the sharing? Cool. Okay. Great. Power of PowerPoint. God, there we go. Brilliant. Okay. So you've asked questions as we go through. One thing I will say, these sessions, again, this one is no different. We've been highly interactive, but equally, if there are future sessions that you want to see us run, we do actually, and we'll go on and talk about it a bit more in a second, we have on the website, if you go bizagi.com/hangouts, you'll see a schedule for the next 2 sessions coming up in February and March. So in February, we've got a deep dive session on the 22nd of February about live processes. And then in March, we have a session on data virtualization on the 29th of March. But these things aren't set in stone. So if there's something that you particularly want to see us talk around, a deep dive topic on, then we can look at that. So feel free to either post your comments about future sessions you'd like to see in the comments box, in the question box, or indeed at the end of the session, when you get asked for feedback, feel free to put your comments in there and we'll receive them as well there too. As I said, it looks like we've kind of exhausted your questions, which is always good. It's always a good sign. So it just leaves me to say at the end here, please go over to the Hangouts page. You'll also see on demand the sessions that we've run previously. We've covered a range of topics already, both on modeler and collaboration, as well as things like IoT before Christmas and artificial intelligence. So we're adding to the library of content all the time. Feel free to go and have a look at those, suggest other ideas you'd like to see as well. There's one last thing that I'll leave you with. We actually have another webinar series coming up in February, on the 20th of February, We have every quarter a virtual summit. And in that summit, we cover a range of topics. They tend to be less product orientated. They tend to be more around the challenges of digital transformation. And the topic of the virtual summit on the 20th is all around agility and how you drive agility within a transformation program. Very hot topic, we know, for a lot of customers right now, being agile. So please feel free, again, if you go to bizagi.com summit, you'll find all the details about how to register on that session as well. And before we go, have we got one last question?
Yes. So when I model a process in Bizagi Studio, where can I specify the roles, names of users, risk variants, etc.? We can specify the information per process, per activity, and per task, question mark? And if the process is a collaboration diagram. Sounds like there's a lot of information to cover there. I suspect that's something we should reach out to cover after the event. But the
yes, it's the simple answer.
The help portal and the training portal would be a very good first start for covering that off, I think.
So William will contact you afterwards to give you more details of that. Yeah, okay. Fantastic. Well, again, as always, great that you've been able to join us. Hopefully you found it useful, and thank you and good afternoon.
Thank you very much, everyone.